The fog hung low over the river that night, curling around the rusted bridge like it had been waiting for me. I remember the soft hum of the water, almost like it was whispering my name, and the way the wooden planks creaked under my steps. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching and twitching in the pale, flickering light of my flashlight. I thought I was alone, but the feeling of being watched was already pressing close, quiet and patient, like the world itself was holding its breath. A chill drifted up from the mist, carrying a scent I couldn't place, metallic and damp, as if the river had swallowed something it wasn't meant to. Somewhere in the distance, a faint splash echoed, far too deliberate to be random, and I froze. That's when I saw it, just a dark shape, lingering at the water's edge, unmoving and staring. The bridge was older than memory, wood warped and worn. Fog clung to my ankles, cold, damp. I stepped onto the first plank. It groaned beneath me, soft, almost like a sigh. Each step whispered, quick, thin, restless. I told myself it was the wind. But the whispers, they weren't carried by the air. They pressed in, brushing against my ears. A pale light shimmered in the water below, flickering, hesitant. It pulled my gaze, trembling like it didn't belong. I froze. The shape beneath the surface moved too deliberately, too human, too still. The bridge seemed to narrow with each breath I drew. Fog thickened, curling up my legs, my chest. The wood underfoot hummed quietly, almost a tune I couldn't place. I felt my name brushing against my skin. Not from lips, but from the planks themselves. Whisper, whisper. My name. I stopped walking. Air heavy, thick with something unsaid. A shiver ran through me, slow, like it had time to taste my bones. The light beneath the bridge pulsed, rising and falling. Every flicker revealed that shape again. Closer, waiting. My hands grazed the rope railing. Rough, wet. Every fiber prickled under my fingers. The whispers grew louder. A chorus now, soft and steady, calling me. Closer, always closer. I wanted to step back. I wanted to run. But my feet rooted themselves. Listening, a shadow detached from the fog. Slid along the boards ahead, silent, smooth, not mine. I felt the air tighten around my throat. Breath shallow. Time slower. A heartbeat I could hear against my chest. The water reflected pale light again. And the shape, it mimicked me. Every movement mirrored, just beneath the ripple. Too deliberate, I whispered my own name. No response. Then, a repetition. My own name, in that thin, rustling hum. Layered, echoing, mocking. I stepped forward. Plank after plank, each groaning my secret back at me. The fog swallowed the bridge behind. I was alone, but not alone. The shape below tilted its head. I could almost feel its eyes under the water. Cold, patient, knowing. Wind tried to rush through the mist, but it carried nothing. Only whispers. Soft footsteps beneath the boards, a pause. The bridge sighed. I held my breath. Every nerve tuned to the trembling air. Then it stopped. The hum faded. The shape vanished. Only fog and damp wood remained. I stayed still for a long moment, listening for a return, feeling the planks beneath my hands, shivering in the thick, silent air. I moved slowly forward, step by step, each whisper now a memory, each flicker of light a warning I almost understood. The bridge stretched before me, fog curling higher, and I walked on. The river lay still, mirror-like. I could see the sky bending strangely above it, a sky I didn't remember ever knowing. Fog hovered low over the banks, curling around my ankles. The air smelled damp, cold, and faintly of earth that had forgotten sunlight. Every breath felt heavier, pressing in. I knelt at the edge. The water didn't ripple like water should. Each wave moved deliberately, folding back onto itself. Something beneath, purposeful. I leaned closer. The surface held my reflection, but it wasn't right. Not mine. It smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Eyes darker than the night around me. Watching, waiting. I swallowed. The fog crept up my neck, chilled my skin through the thin fabric of my shirt. It moved like fingers, slow, patient. The river breathed beneath me, a soft hum, almost melodic, vibrating up through my hands pressed to the damp earth. I felt it in my chest, in my teeth. In the pulse of the night, I tried to look away, but the reflection followed, tilting its head in quiet amusement. I could feel its gaze crawl down my spine. Static on my skin, soft as whispers, a ripple cut across the surface. The shape beneath shifted, just for a moment, and then stillness. I reached toward the water. Fingers hovered above, trembling. The chill of the fog wrapped around them. The river answered with a gentle pull tugging at my pulse. I drew back, breath shallow. The reflection lingered, mocking. I could almost hear it, whispering in the hum of the air, repeating a name I didn't say aloud. The trees along the bank rustled, not with wind, but with patience. Shadows stretching across the river's surface, folding into the stillness. I could smell wet moss, the rot of something drowned, and something else, something faintly metallic, clinging to the fog. It lingered in my nose, my throat heavy. I knelt again, eyes locked with that smile. I wanted to touch it, to trace it away, but my fingers froze in the cold mist. A soft ripple moved through the water. The reflection blinked. Slow, deliberate, unblinking eyes now, piercing. I leaned closer still, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to hold its breath with me. The air thickened, pulling at my chest. The river mirrored every detail of my face, except the expression. I could feel my pulse in the fog. A quiet drum against the silence. Every heartbeat answered by the slow, deliberate movements beneath the water. Then the ripples stilled. The reflection no longer smiled. It only stared, cold, silent. I backed away. Fog swallowed my feet. The river lay smooth again, pale light reflecting nothing familiar. I stayed there for a long while, alone. The chill pressed in. Every nerve alert, yet still. The river didn't move. It did not breathe. It only waited, and I could not stop watching. The path ran along the river, dark and narrow. Fog curled around the trees, thick, suffocating. The damp air pressed against my skin. My feet whispered over the wet earth. Leaves rustled under soft steps. I was alone, or so I told myself. Then, a step behind me, slow, deliberate. I froze. Air still, fog closing in. Another step, echoing, careful, unhurried. I turned. Nothing. Only fog. Only the river glinting pale light across the mist. A twig snapped somewhere close, quick, sharp. The echo carried, bouncing off invisible walls of fog. The path ahead shifted. Shadows moved faster than my eyes could follow. Thin shapes, curling and stretching with the fog. I felt them brush the edge of my vision. The footsteps continued. Never closer, never farther. A rhythm in the hush, matching my pulse. I smelled wet leaves, damp earth, and something faintly metallic. Something hovering in the fog that didn't belong. It clung to my throat, my hair, my chest. I took a step forward. The mist seemed to pull back, then press closer. Each footfall whispered against my bones. Soft, mocking, patient, I stopped. Breath shallow. Silence stretched tight around me. And then, another step. The shadow shifted at the edge of the path. Too fast for the fog to hold. Too deliberate for chance. It moved, watching, waiting. I felt the static on my skin, fingers tingling, neck crawling with the hum of the night. The river beside me mirrored nothing. Only the fog, only the dark. I turned again. Still nothing, only fog. Only whispers of soft steps, a pause. Air thick, almost heavy. The path seemed endless. The footsteps, endless too. I walked, step by careful step. Fog brushing my shoulders, my face, my hands. I could feel the presence without seeing it. Twigs snapped here and there. Leaves rustled. Shadows flickered. The rhythm of steps pressed in. I held my breath, waited, tried to measure the distance. Couldn't. The fog thinned slightly. The path widened. The footsteps ceased. The world exhaled. I stayed still, feeling the hum of the river, the rustling of leaves, the lingering chill that didn't fade. And then I moved again, slowly, softly, the mist curling around me, alone, but not alone. The bridge stretched ahead, pale and silent. Fog wrapped around its beams, curling like smoke. Cold seeped into my bones. Slow, patient. A light glowed in the distance. Soft, warm, impossible against the night. A lantern. alone, swaying slightly with the unseen breeze. I stepped forward. Each plank whispered underfoot. Breath caught in my chest. The warmth of the flame pulled me closer. It pressed against the chill, quiet and inviting. I could smell the faint tang of soot carried through the mist. The bridge narrowed. Fog thickened at the edges. The lantern trembled in the dim light. I reached it. Hand hovering above the handle. The flame flickered, and then darkness. The warmth vanished. The lantern swallowed the air with shadow. My pulse jumped in the emptiness. The fog seemed heavier now. Something brushed past me. Not wind, not mist. Solid, weighty, unseen. I felt it in my shoulders, my back. A presence folded into the night. Patient. Watching. The silence pressed in. Every breath loud against the dark. Soft footsteps, my own or not, echoed across the wooden planks. I wanted to step back. But the bridge stretched on, and the lantern remained, extinguished. I traced the air with my fingers. Nothing, only the chill lingering, deep, unyielding. A hum settled over the night, faint and persistent. The fog swirled around my ankles. I could feel each droplet wet and cold. Every plank beneath me murmured. Every shadow clung closer. I dared to look down. The river below reflected nothing but black. No flicker, no light. Only the hum of water sliding silently along its path. The presence lingered. I could sense it patient, almost amused. A weight pressing at the edge of perception. I walked slowly, step by careful step. The darkness followed. The fog shivered with every footfall. The bridge sighed beneath me. A soft, tired creak. The night held its breath. And then, nothing. I paused. The cold pressed in, deep into my lungs. The lantern's warmth had vanished. Only emptiness remained. I moved forward, hands brushing the rope railing. Fog curling higher, alone. But not alone. The river lay quiet beneath the night sky. Fog hugged the banks thick and wet. Cold seeped into my legs, soaking through shoes and socks. A low hum rose from the water. Steady, vibrating through my bones. Not wind, not the river itself. Something deeper. I knelt at the edge. Fingers traced the shapes beneath the pale surface. Twisting, folding, moving like they had purpose. The hum grew. It filled the air. Pressed against my chest, my ears, my teeth. A resonance that made the fog feel alive. I leaned closer. The water reflected nothing of the sky. Only dark, shifting forms that seemed too deliberate to be waves. A cold breath brushed my ear, soft, feather-light, but solid, heavy. I shivered from the neck down. The hum held me, curious, patient, relentless. I could feel it vibrating through my fingertips, my knees, my spine. Shapes twisted beneath the water, silent, shadowed, almost human, almost mine. I traced them with trembling hands. The water moved against me, resisting, yielding in ways I couldn't predict. A pause. The night held its breath. The fog shivered across my shoulders. I could smell the riverbed. Damp moss, rotting leaves, something metallic, sharp, lurking just under the surface. The hum grew fainter, then steadied again. Like a pulse, slow and deliberate. A rhythm I could not escape. I tried to rise. The cold pressed against my skin. The river seemed heavier, almost aware. The hum, lingering beneath my feet. Silence followed, thick. It clung to my hair, my clothing, my bones. I stayed kneeling, trembling, listening. The shapes vanished from the water. The hum receded, faint now. Yet its memory lingered in my chest, in the fog curling at my ankles, in the air brushing my cheeks. I rose slowly, hands dripping with cold, dark water. Every step on the bank echoed softly, swallowed immediately by the fog. The river lay still once more, pale light reflecting only emptiness. Alone, yet not entirely. The forest hugged the riverbank. Fog tangled between the trunks, thick and damp. Cold seeped into my bones, slow and insistent. Branches twisted against the mist. Long shadows stretched across the ground, moving without wind. Something in the rhythm. Unnatural. I stepped carefully on the path. Leaves and twigs pressed underfoot, wet with fog. Each step echoed softly, swallowed immediately by silence. A shape appeared between the trees. Barely visible, gone before I could focus. The air smelled of damp earth and rotting leaves. Something metallic lingered faintly, sharp against the cold. My skin prickled. Every nerve alert, I stopped. The forest seemed to breathe around me. Branches scraped, low and deliberate. Shadows shifted closer. I felt the fog press against my face. Cold, wet. A weight behind my eyes, as if something watched from within the trees. I took a slow step forward. The path narrowed. Shadows stretched, folding into one another, reaching. A rustle, quick, sharp, yet no wind. The shape reappeared, fleeting, almost human. It moved between the trunks with patience, deliberate, silent. I realized then I wasn't the only one walking the path tonight. Presence pressed against the fog. Patient, watching, my heartbeat trembled in the quiet. Every breath loud against the muted hum of the forest. Twigs snapped underfoot somewhere close. The fog thickened around my legs. It curled, brushing my skin, whispering cold against my neck. Shadows melted into the darkness between the trees. I tried to look around. Nothing. Only the rhythm of the forest. The twisting branches. The fog thick and alive. A pause. The weight of unseen eyes pressed down. Every hair on my arm stood trembling. The path felt endless, folding into itself. I kept moving, step by careful step. The forest held its breath with me. Shadows shifted, following, folding, patient. I sensed it lingering. Not in sight, but in the air, in the rustle of leaves. In the damp cold brushing my face, I reached the edge of the trees. Fog curling higher, pale light thinning. Alone, but not alone. And I kept walking. Fog clung to my legs like wet silk. No matter how fast I walked, it followed. Twisting, curling, relentless. Shapes emerged from the haze. Thin, shifting, dissolving before I could focus. Every turn revealed something new, and then nothing. The river breathed beside me. A wet splash echoed, closer than before. The water trembling with intent. I pressed forward. Footsteps soft, swallowed by fog. Hands brushing damp leaves. Cold mist curling around my hair and neck. The shapes flickered again. Thin shadows stretching across the path. They seemed patient, watching, waiting. The hum of the river pulsed beneath my feet, static crawling across my skin. The mist thickened with each breath I drew. I stopped. The air pressed against my chest, heavy. Eyes searching the gray, catching nothing. Yet something was there. A splash. Closer. Water sliding along stones, deliberate. The fog parted slightly. Only to fold around me again. I felt the presence behind me. Not wind, not shadow. Solid, patient, pressing into the mist. My pulse rattled in my ears. Cold seeped into my hands, my legs, my spine. The mist whispered, brushing my face. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only fog. Only the river, pale and unreadable. Step by step, I moved forward. The mist curling higher, brushing my shoulders. Every rustle of leaves echoed in the silence. Every snap of twig answered by the hum of the river. Shapes dissolved at the edge of my vision. Always just out of reach. Always following. Always waiting. A pause. The river breathed. The mist pressed closer. I could feel the weight of it. Patient, lingering. I kept walking. Hands brushing damp trees. Feet soft on wet earth. Alone. But not alone. The fog did not relent. It followed, curling around my legs, my arms, my face. A soft, deliberate presence moving with me. Always with me, I whispered to the mist. No reply. Only the river, steady, and the shapes, patient, dissolving, returning, and I walked on, step by step. Breath slow, careful. The fog pressing, unyielding, waiting. The ferry sat still, docked, abandoned. Chains rusted, creaking softly in the cold night. Mist curled through broken windows, curling like smoke inside the cabin. Cold pressed through my clothes, biting at my skin. The wood groaned beneath each careful step. I stepped aboard. The air smelled of wet metal, old wood, and something faintly bitter. Each breath echoed in the hollow space. The deck shivered underfoot. Planks whispered secrets I couldn't understand. I leaned on the railing, fog curling around my hands. Something brushed my arm. Too quick to see. Too heavy to ignore. A weight, a presence, pressing, patient. I froze. The mist swallowed my vision. Chains creaked. moving as though the ferry remembered my steps. I tried to reach for the source. Nothing. Only the lingering chill and the subtle hum of the river below. The windows framed darkness. Pale light spilled across broken boards, reflecting shapes that shifted just out of focus, shadows bent in impossible angles. I stepped deeper into the ferry, mist curling around my ankles, rust biting at my fingers. The floor groaned beneath me, every plank responding. Silence pressed in, a thick, suffocating weight. I felt the presence move again, brushing closer. Not air, not shadow. Solid, patient. I traced the walls, cold and damp. The smell of decay lingered, faintly metallic. The mist seemed alive, folding around me, pushing me forward. The hum of the river under the hull matched the pulse in my chest. Every heartbeat mirrored in the boards beneath my feet. The ferry breathed with me. A pause. The air held still. The presence lingered. I could feel it in my hair, my neck, my spine. Chains creaked again. A slow, deliberate rhythm. The ferry seemed older than memory, yet aware. Watching. Waiting. I stepped toward the exit. Mist curling higher, brushing my face. Hands pressed to the cold wood railing. Alone. But not alone. The deck lay still behind me. Darkness pooling in the corners. The ferry waited, patient. And I walked away. The bridge stretched above the river, silent and cold. Fog drifted around its beams, thick and still. The night pressed against my skin, damp and heavy. I leaned over the railing. Water moved beneath me, dark and glassy. And then I saw them. Eyes. Glowing faintly, unblinking. Watching. Tracking every breath I drew. The current shifted beneath them. Not naturally. Something large, hidden, moving just out of reach. A chill pressed up my spine. The fog wrapped higher, curling around my shoulders. My hands gripped the railing, wet and rough. The eyes held me, silent, patient. They didn't blink. They didn't waver. I could smell the damp riverbank. Wet wood, cold stone, something metallic beneath the water. The fog carried it to me in whispers I could almost hear. I leaned closer. The water shimmered, folding light strangely. Reflections bent unnaturally. The eyes followed every movement. The bridge groaned softly beneath my weight. Static prickled along my skin. Breath caught in my chest. Time slowed. I tried to look away. But the eyes, they waited. Anchored in the water. Unblinking. Patient. A ripple ran across the surface. The current shifted again. Something moved beneath. Careful, deliberate, hidden, watching. I stayed still, feeling the weight of the night. The mist, the chill, the hum of water against wood. The eyes glimmering faintly beneath me, and I could not look away. A pause. Silence pressed. The fog pressed closer, and the river held its secrets. I stepped back, hands trembling. The bridge sighed. The eyes vanished beneath the dark water, but I knew they were still there, waiting, patient, and I walked on. The river widened here. Fog hovered low, thick, curling around my ankles. The air smelled of wet earth and rust, sharp and lingering. A dock appeared. Half-submerged, old wood, dark and slick. I hadn't noticed it before. It seemed new, yet forgotten. I stepped onto the planks. They groaned softly, wet and pliant beneath my weight. The river pressed against the supports, dark and patient. Water gurgled below. Soft murmurs like whispers of forgotten things. I leaned closer, tracing shapes moving just beneath the surface. The mist curled higher, brushing my face. Cold settled into my chest. Static prickled along my arms, my neck. Shadows stretched across the dock, elongated, folding into one another. The fog carried the scent of decay, faint and metallic. I paused. The river held its breath. Planks murmured underfoot. The gurgle beneath me deepened, deliberate. I traced the edge of the dock with my fingertips. Water lapped softly, folding shapes back into shadow. Something moved beneath, patient, hidden, aware. The silence pressed. Only the hum of the river, steady, deliberate. The mist curled around my legs, higher, pressing cold against my skin. A pause. I could feel presence beside me, not seen but tangible. Something heavy in the fog. Waiting, I stepped forward. The dock bent slightly, groaning under my careful steps. Cold water licked my ankles. Every movement echoed softly, swallowed immediately by the fog. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Shapes dissolved into the mist. The gurgle beneath became a low, constant rhythm. Whispers folded into the sound, patient, faint, unyielding. I stayed still, listening. Breath shallow. Hands pressed against wet wood. Alone. But not alone. The dock stretched on. Fog curling higher. Water dark and unreadable beneath. And I walked slowly forward. The riverbank lay under thick fog. Night pressed in, damp and cold. Every breath I took folded into the mist. Figures emerged, still. Too still to be alive. Their faces were hidden, obscured by fog, shadow, something between. Yet their presence pressed down on me. The air smelled of wet earth, old leaves, and something metallic, faint but sharp. Static prickled along my arms and neck. Every hair on my body trembled. I tried to move. Legs heavy, rooted to the damp ground. Planks, mud, earth? It didn't matter. I couldn't lift a foot. The figures didn't approach. They didn't retreat. They simply waited. Patient. Shadows folded into the fog around them. Light bent strangely against the mist, pale and trembling. I could feel their weight without seeing it fully. I breathed slowly. Each exhale swallowed by the heavy night. Rustling leaves, soft underfoot. Yet nothing moved near them. My eyes traced their outlines. Tall shapes, thin shapes, standing just beyond reach. Every movement of mine mirrored by the hum of the river. The fog shifted slightly. It wrapped around my shoulders, brushing my face, wet and cold. Figures remained, patient, silent, pressing. I sensed them in my chest. Their presence folded into the air, into the mist, into my own heartbeat. It pressed me to the ground, yet offered no explanation. A pause. Silence deepened. The river flowed quietly, but every ripple carried weight. I tried again to step forward. Legs resisted. The mud, the planks, the very night itself held me. I was tethered. Figures flickered at the edge of my vision. Shadows bending in impossible ways. Faces unseen, but somehow aware. I exhaled slowly, letting the cold seep in. The fog pressed closer, around my neck, my arms, my legs. Alone. Yet not alone. They did not move, but neither did I. Time held still. Mist curling, shadows folding. And I stayed, trembling, patient, waiting. The bridge stretched before me, old and worn. Fog curled around the beams, thick and damp. Night pressed in from every side. I stepped forward. The wood groaned beneath my weight, a low haunting sound, vibrating through my legs, my chest, my spine. Each plank seemed to protest, quivering in time with my heartbeat. Cold mist curling around my ankles. Static prickling along my arms. I leaned over the railing. The river moved silently beneath. Shadows folded into the fog. Something shifted. Unseen. The echo lingered. Long. Stretching across the water. Fingers of sound reaching, brushing my skin. I took another step. The boards trembled again. Every movement mirrored in the hollow hum of the river. A rhythm I couldn't escape. Mist pressed closer. Cold against my neck, my cheeks, my hands. The wood beneath my feet moaned again, deliberate, heavy. The bridge? Alive in some way I couldn't name. I tried to peer below. The fog swallowed the water. Ripples hinted at something larger moving beneath. Patient. Waiting. A pause. Silence pressed. Every creak, every echo hung in the still night. I felt the weight of it. Watching. I stepped slowly, careful. The planks vibrated with each careful movement. Shadows twisted across the fog. The bridge held its breath with me. Something shifted beneath. A presence, heavy and unseen. The echo lingered. I could feel it in my chest, my shoulders, my legs. The night pressed in. Mist wrapped around me. Alone, yet not alone. The bridge moaned again, and I moved forward, step by step. Breath slow, careful. Every heartbeat mirrored in the wood beneath me. And I walked on. The forest pressed around me, dense and quiet. Fog hung low, curling through the roots and underbrush. The air smelled of wet leaves and moss, damp and heavy. A faint light glowed ahead. Pale, unwavering. Deep in the trees, I stepped closer. The light pulsed, slow and rhythmic, like breathing. It illuminated nothing fully. Shapes flitted just beyond, teasing recognition. Twigs cracked softly beneath my careful steps. Cold brushed my arms and neck. Static prickled along my skin. I paused. The fog seemed thicker here, curling higher. The pulsing light drew me forward, patient, insistent. Shadows moved just beyond my sight. Elongated forms bending, folding into the mist. They whispered nothing. Yet I felt them, watching. The hum of the forest was quiet, almost imperceptible. Breath caught in my chest. Every heartbeat mirrored in the rhythm of the light. I reached out, fingertips brushing against damp branches. The mist clung, cool and wet. Shapes flickered at the edge of my vision. Always there, never fully revealed, I stepped closer. The pulsing grew slower, deliberate, like the forest itself was breathing. Shadows dancing just beyond clarity. A pause. The fog pressed around me, tight, intimate. The light pulsed faintly in response. I could feel the presence of something. Aware, I exhaled slowly. Cold mist curling into my hair, my clothes. Every sound amplified in the quiet. Leaves rustling, branches swaying, water dripping far away. The shapes flitted again. Just beyond my vision, patient, curious. The light pulsed steadily, unwavering, yet alive. I moved forward, step by careful step. Hands brushing damp branches, feet sinking slightly into soft earth. Alone, yet not alone. The light glowed. Shadows folded into the fog. Shapes teasing, shifting. And I walked forward, drawn by its pulse, patient and quiet. The river stretched before me, dark and still. Fog curled along the banks, heavy and damp. The air smelled of wet stone and earth, sharp and lingering. The water seemed different tonight. It whispered secrets, low and urgent, indecipherable, yet insistent. I bent closer. Breath caught in my chest. Fingers grazing the cold, wet railing, trying to understand. Ripples moved beneath the surface, a subtle twitch, deliberate, like a warning. The current shifted slightly, patient and deliberate. Mist clung to my hair and clothes. Static prickled across my arms. The river hum pressed in, soft, unyielding. I leaned further. Shapes shifted just beneath the water, elusive. Dark, patient, aware. Nothing fully revealed, yet everything sensed. The fog pressed closer. Cold curled along my neck and shoulders. Rustling leaves trembled nearby. Alone. Yet not alone. I exhaled slowly. The whispers seemed to respond, folding into the ripples. The water held its secrets, patient, unblinking. A pause. The river murmured again. Subtle. Insistent. The current twisted slightly, hiding something larger beneath. I traced the edge of the riverbank. Fingers brushing wet reeds and cold stones. Shadows bent strangely, folding into the fog. Everything. Subtle yet wrong. Another ripple. The surface twitched like a pulse. Something moved beneath, deliberate, unseen, watching, waiting. I stepped back. Cold soaked my shoes. Breath slow. Every heartbeat mirrored in the hum of the water. Silence pressed. The fog thickened, curling into my clothes and hair. Ripples disappeared. The river held its secrets, and I walked on. Twilight draped the river in silver. The bridge stood ahead, a dark silhouette against fading light. Fog curled along the banks, damp and cold. I stepped forward. Shadows stretched unnaturally. They moved against the wind, bending, folding, watching. The air smelled of wet wood and riverweed. Static prickled along my arms. Breath caught in my chest. I heard it then, breathing not my own. Soft, deliberate, patient. I paused. Feet on the planks, cold seeping through shoes. The bridge groaned beneath me, low and echoing. Shadows folded around the railings, twisting strangely. Mist clung to my hair, wet and curling. Every heartbeat mirrored in the rhythm of the river below. The wind whispered faintly through the fog. Alone, yet not alone. I stepped forward again. Planks vibrated softly, groaning with my careful weight. Shadows twisted at the edges of my vision, folding into the fog. The silver water moved quietly. Reflections bent strangely, shapes appearing where there should be none. Breath quickened, but I kept moving, step by slow step. A pause. The fog pressed closer, cool and damp. The other breathing, steady, patient, followed. I could feel it in my chest, the weight of unseen eyes. I moved along the bridge. Planks murmured beneath me, each step deliberate. Mist curled around my legs, arms, neck. The twilight faded, leaving only silver shadows, step by careful step. Breath slow, deliberate. The river murmured below. Shadows stretched, watching, waiting. I reached the far side. The bridge settled behind me with a soft groan. Silence pressed. Alone again, yet the weight lingered. Fog thickened along the riverbank. Night pressed in, damp and heavy. The air smelled of wet earth, rusted leaves, and cold stone. Shapes began to form in the mist, indistinct at first. Watching, I blinked, hoped they would vanish. But they lingered. Slowly, faces emerged. Familiar, yet impossible. People I had never met, yet somehow recognized. Mist curled along my arms and neck, cold and wet. Static prickled along my skin. Every breath hung heavy in the night. They shifted, morphing, bending in the fog, eyes meeting mine, hollow and curious. I stepped back. The ground soft beneath my shoes, damp with river mist. Rustling leaves trembled around me, though no wind moved. I tried to look away. But the figures remained, patient, waiting, shapes bent into forms I knew. Unseen memories clinging to their presence. Faces flickered in and out, teasing recognition. The fog pressed closer, curling around my shoulders. Breath quickened, alone, yet watched by countless eyes, shapes, whispers. I exhaled slowly, cold mist curling into my hair and clothes. The river below reflected nothing but shadow and silver. A pause. The figures shifted slightly, morphing into new shapes, new faces. Curious, patient, unblinking. I stepped forward, careful, hands brushing wet branches, feet sinking slightly into soft mud. Shapes followed, indistinct yet aware, every heartbeat mirrored in the hum of the river. The fog pressed tighter. Shadows folded around me, lingering, watching. I moved along the path. Step by careful step, the faces flickered and shifted, patient, alive in their stillness. And I walked on. The riverbank lay quiet beneath a pale moon. Fog clung to the reeds, curling along the water. The air smelled of damp soil and cold stone. A faint sound reached me. Laughter, soft at first. Distorted, playful, as if teasing. I froze, breath caught in my chest. The hum of the river beneath me was steady, indifferent. The laughter followed. Soft at first, curling through the mist. Then sharper, cruel. I stepped forward, feet sinking slightly into wet earth. Mist brushing my arms, cold and persistent. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the bank. Twigs snapped under unseen weight. Rustling leaves trembled around me, though no wind moved. The laughter echoed again. Closer this time, filling the silence with something. Wrong, I exhaled slowly. Cold mist curling into my hair and clothes. Alone, yet haunted. The river shimmered silver under the moonlight. Reflections twisted and pulsed strangely. Shapes bent in the fog, patient and aware. Step by careful step, I moved along the bank. The laughter followed. Soft, playful, then sharp, cruel, lingering in the mist, a pause. The fog thickened, pressing against my shoulders. Every heartbeat echoed the rhythm of the river. The unseen presence lingered, patient and waiting. I reached the edge of the reeds. The laughter faded into the river's hum. Silence pressed. Regret settled heavy in my chest. I walked on, fog curling, shadows folding. The echoes remained, distant, but never gone. The lantern glowed alone on the bridge. Its light flickered softly in the thick night air. Fog curled around the planks, damp and cold. I stepped closer. Shadows shifted beneath the lantern, slow, deliberate, alive. At first, they mimicked my movements, my breath, my careful steps, my trembling hands. Then, they moved on their own. Something unseen laughed softly, a sound that pressed against my chest, cold, playful, yet cruel. The wood creaked beneath me. Mist wrapped around my legs, soaking through shoes. Every heartbeat echoed with the shadow's quiet rhythm. I tried to step back. The shadows followed, folding and stretching. They swirled in shapes I didn't recognize, shapes I feared. The air smelled of wet wood and smoke from long extinguished flames. Static prickled along my arms and neck. Alone, yet surrounded. I exhaled slowly, fingers brushing the damp planks. Fog curled higher, pressing into the lantern's pale light. The shadows writhed again, turning, twisting, mimicking, then twisting further. Eyes unseen followed me, patient, hungry. I stepped closer to the rail, leaning slightly. Mist licked my skin. Every sound exaggerated in the quiet night. The laughter came again, soft, almost intimate. Then fading, leaving only the shadows beneath the lantern. Heavy, patient, unmoving, yet watching, I turned slowly. The river reflected nothing but dark silver. Shadows lingered, stretching beyond the light, beyond reason. I stepped back. The lantern flickered once, then steadied. Silence pressed around me, alone. Yet somehow not. The ferry waited, silent and still. Fog clung to the deck, curling around the rusted rails. The air smelled of cold water and damp metal. I stepped aboard. Wood groaned beneath my weight. Mist licked my ankles, cold and insistent. The river stretched out, silver in the pale light. Ripples whispered against the hull. A hum vibrated beneath the surface, low and steady. I looked away for a moment, then back. The ferry was gone. Nothing remained but water. Ripples expanding outward, restless and wrong. The river seemed endless, folding into shadows. My breath caught, hands pressed to the wet railing. Cold fog curling around my fingers. The sky above blurred, pale and unrecognizable. Every sound felt distant. The hum of the river pressed against my chest. I stepped forward, feet sinking slightly into the slick wood. Silence pressed in from all sides. The water shimmered unnaturally. Shadows stretched long beneath the surface. A feeling of being watched settled into my bones. I called out, voice thin and trembling. The fog swallowed it. Only the river answered, restless, endless, indifferent. Isolation pressed like a weight. Every heartbeat loud in my ears. Every breath shallow, trembling. I reached for the rail again. Cold metal under my fingertips. The ferry, nowhere. Ripples faded slowly, leaving a mirror-like surface. The river seemed to shift, folding into itself. Alone, yet somehow aware of something unseen. I stepped back. Fog curling, dense and suffocating. Every shadow seemed alive, waiting. The ferry had vanished. The river endless. And I remained. Breath caught, chest heavy, alone. The river flowed silently. Fog hung heavy, curling through the trees. The air smelled damp, earthy, like the soil was breathing. I walked along the bank, feet sinking into soft mud, cold creeping through my shoes. Branches brushed against my shoulders, static in the silence. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint, and almost my own voice. I froze. The trees, repeated my thoughts, softly, like a question. A name I hadn't spoken aloud. Leaves rustled in a rhythm, deliberate and slow. Each sound folded into the fog, pressing against my ears. I blinked, trying to shake it, but the whispers lingered. I took a step forward. The fog swirled around my legs. It carried the words again, my own thoughts, murmuring back at me. Something shifted in the branches. A shadow stretched across the ground, thin and twisting. It was alive, but not mine. The forest felt awake. Every leaf, every twig, listening. Every breath I drew echoed back, soft, distorted. I whispered a single word, cautious. It returned, hushed and reverent, as if the trees had waited for it. A shiver ran down my spine. The fog thickened. Shapes moved just beyond vision, flitting between trunks. A presence, patient and aware, followed each step I took. Silence fell. Then a faint hum, low and continuous, vibrating through the roots beneath me. My heart echoed against it, slow, steady, unrelenting. I reached out, hand brushing bark damp with mist. It felt warm, pulsing, alive. The whispers circled my mind, soft and persistent. I stepped back. Branches bent as if sighing. Leaves fluttered against the cold air, repeating fragments of my thoughts. The fog pressed closer, damp and heavy. Breath visible, short and shallow. A sense of being seen entirely without eyes. I turned, expecting to find another presence. Only fog, swirling and endless. The whispers faded, but never stopped entirely. I walked on, careful, measured. Each footstep pressing into mud, leaving a mark that the mist tried to swallow. The trees whispered still, patient and eternal, alone, observed and followed by voices that knew me better than I did. The river moved, slow and steady. Fog clung to the banks, curling into the trees. The air smelled damp, metallic, and cold against my skin. I knelt at the water's edge. My fingers brushed the surface. It trembled. Like it was alive, shadows twisted beneath the water, dark forms shifting in patterns I couldn't name. A hum rose from the river, low and steady, vibrating through my bones. The water pulsed, up, down, rising and falling as though it breathed. I pressed my hand against it. It beat in time with my heart. A rhythm that felt too familiar, too aware of me. Ripples spread across the surface, deliberate. Each one a silent message, urging me closer. I leaned forward, breath fogging in the cold night. The river smelled faintly of decay and moss. I could feel the pulse beneath my palm, warm and liquid. It moved with intention, patient, infinite. I tried to pull back. The current pressed, gentle but insistent. A shiver ran up my arm. The shadows beneath twisted again. They followed my gaze, slipping away when I blinked. Something watched, just beneath the surface. I pressed closer, fingertips grazing the water. It trembled against my skin. A pulse, deep and knowing, echoing in my chest. The fog thickened. The forest fell silent as if holding its breath. Only the river moved, slow and deliberate. I felt a quiet dread creeping in around the edges. Curiosity and fear mingled. The water's rhythm matched my own, too perfectly. A ripple stretched across the river. It licked at my hand, cold and alive. A whisper of movement beneath, swift, ungraspable. I leaned closer still, nose almost touching the surface. It pulsed again. I could feel the life beneath, breathing with me. For a long moment, I watched, alone, surrounded by fog and shadow. The river knew me. I drew back slowly. The water stilled, almost sighing as I let go. The hum faded into the night. Shadows remained, waiting, just beneath. I stood, cold and trembling. The river breathed quietly, endlessly, and I walked away. The bridge stretched before me, dark and endless. Fog pressed against the railings, damp and cold. The air smelled faintly of wet wood and moss. A light flickered ahead, dim, hesitant, like a heartbeat in the night. Each flash revealed glimpses, shapes, moving just beyond recognition. I stepped forward. The planks creaked softly under my weight. My breath mingled with the mist, shallow, quick. Another flicker. A watcher, or the shadow of one. Gone the next instant, as if the light had swallowed it. The wind stirred. Rustling leaves whispered secrets I couldn't understand. The fog swirled around my ankles, cold and wet. The bridge seemed alive, vibrating under my steps. The light danced again, flickering in sync with my heartbeat. Shapes appeared, paused, then dissolved like smoke. I stopped. Silence settled for a moment, heavy and expectant. The watchers returned, fleeting and indistinct. I could feel eyes, many eyes, tracking me. They moved when I moved, vanished when I tried to stare. The chill ran down my spine, settling like frost under my skin. Each flash brought a new hint, a new shape. Some human, some not. All watching, patient, unyielding. The fog thickened. I reached the center of the bridge. The light flickered one last time, and a shadow lingered longer than it should have. I felt the air shift, breath against my neck, but no one there. The river below whispered and hummed, echoing the unease above. Step by step I crossed, each movement deliberate, careful. The watchers faded behind me with the distance and mist. By the time I reached the far side, the light had died. Only fog, cold and silent, remained. I paused, listening. Rustling leaves, the faint hum of water, the echo of my own heartbeat. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed, except the bridge itself and maybe the watchers. Somewhere in the dark. I walked on, alone, carrying the memory of flickering eyes and shadows that were almost real. The fog lay heavy along the riverbank, cold, damp, curling around the gnarled roots of the trees. Each step pressed into silence, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. It moved differently tonight, slower, watching, waiting, thicker where it shouldn't be. Curling toward me like smoke with purpose, shapes began to form. Letters or maybe symbols etched in mist. I blinked, leaned closer. They dissolved before I could read them, vanishing as if swallowed by the night itself. The words, or warnings, were fleeting, urgent, and impossible to hold. A shiver ran down my spine. The air smelled damp, earthy, with a hint of something metallic. I could feel it brushing against my arms, cold and soft. I paused, hearing something behind me. Breath that was not mine, but light, almost playful. The fog twisted again. More letters, more shapes, shifting, dissolving, reappearing. I tried to follow, to make sense, but they were never the same twice. Shadows stretched at the edge of my vision. The trees leaned in closer, their branches scratching the fog. A hum ran beneath it all, low, vibrating in my chest. I stepped forward. The river whispered along the shore, murmuring words I almost understood. Ripples shimmered, reflecting the pale light through the mist. Something lingered just behind me. I could feel it. A weight in the air, a pause in the silence. It didn't move, yet it followed, patient and quiet. The letters became shapes again, some human, some not, each twisting in the fog before fading into nothing. My breath came faster. I reached a hand toward the curling mist. It was cold, wet, and alive, like the fog itself knew me. Another blink, and the words were gone. The shapes vanished. Only the soft, shifting fog remained. I dared not turn. The river murmured, the trees whispered. Something behind me laughed softly, almost regretful. Step by step, I moved along the bank. Each footfall careful, deliberate, afraid to disturb the watching fog. The air felt thick, pressing against my skin, heavy with secrets. When I finally reached a clearing, the fog thinned. The letters, the shapes, the presence, everything retreated, almost apologetic. The mist hovered, pale and soft, curling in the breeze as if nothing had happened. I stopped, listened. The river murmured quietly. The trees swayed with soft whispers. Silence returned, fragile, uneasy, and yet I knew it was still there. Waiting in the folds of fog, alive and patient, watching. The bridge ended abruptly. Planks gave way to nothing but the river stretching endlessly. Silver water, fog curling low, swallowing the far bank. I took a step. The mist thickened around my ankles, damp and cold. Each breath tasted of wet earth and rust. The air pressed against me, heavy, almost alive. A soft hum ran through the fog, vibrating in my chest. My hand brushed the rail, rough, splintered, cold. Another step. The bridge behind me vanished into shadow. The river ahead glimmered, but it offered no path. Silence settled, thick as wool. The fog whispered, curling around my legs like fingers. I felt watched, though I saw nothing. My final step came reluctantly, heavier than the last. Each movement felt drawn out, slow, measured by some unseen rhythm. The river seemed to breathe, rising, falling, in time with my pulse. Shadows beneath its surface shifted, hiding shapes I could not name. I looked down. Water lapped at the edge, dark and glimmering. Ripples traced patterns, deliberate, almost sentient. The mist pressed closer. It swirled into vague forms, teasing recognition. Familiar yet wrong, as if it remembered me. I stopped, felt the weight of the endless water, the fog, the air pressing against my skin. The bridge no longer existed. Only this step, suspended over something unknowable. The cold seeped into my bones. A faint rustling came from the riverbank, leaves brushing against each other in hollow rhythm. I shivered, though no wind stirred. I bent slightly, hand grazing the fog. It parted, coiling around my fingers like smoke, wet and chill. The river pulsed beneath, a heartbeat echoing mine. A shadow flickered in the corner of my vision. It moved with me, though not as I moved. A presence, patient and still, hovering beyond comprehension. I tried to step back, but the bridge was gone. Air and fog pressed forward. The water whispered secrets I could almost understand. A single thought filled my mind. Perhaps I had already crossed. Perhaps I would never leave. The mist curled around my shoulders, damp, heavy, endless. Shapes emerged and dissolved, waiting. The river stretched silver, cold, infinite. I took another breath. Felt the fog in my lungs, the river pulse beneath me. The world seemed to hold its breath along with me. The final step lingered. each movement heavier than the last. Time slowed. My heartbeat sounded like thunder in the fog. I closed my eyes, felt the water, the mist, the shadows beneath and beyond. They waited, patient, unblinking, eternal, and in the quiet I understood. Some steps have no end. Some crossings last forever. The river curled beneath a pale, foggy sky. Mist wrapped around my shoulders, damp and cold. The air smelled of wet earth and something older, forgotten. I sank onto the riverbank. Mud clung to my hands, to my knees. The fog swallowed the world, leaving only the water before me. It whispered. Soft, indecipherable, urgent. The words stirred something in my chest I couldn't name. I leaned closer, felt the cool rush against my fingertips. Shadows moved beneath the surface, subtle, deliberate, alive. The forest behind me was still. Yet I felt eyes, countless, patient, eternal. They traced my movements without sound, without blink. A rustle of leaves. A breath of wind, or was it mine? The fog shifted, curling into shapes I almost recognized. I shivered. The water pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. A soft hum seemed to rise from the river itself, low and constant. Alone. Completely alone, yet not. The presence pressed, invisible but weighty. I closed my eyes, felt the fog on my skin, wet and alive. Heard the water speaking in its quiet, cryptic language. The riverbank stretched endlessly. The fog thickened, coiling around my legs and shoulders. Each breath tasted of damp leaves, of shadows. I dared to move. Soft footsteps on the mud, swallowed immediately by the mist. Nothing responded, but the feeling lingered. Eyes, patient and knowing. A ripple disturbed the river. It wasn't wind, not fish. Something beneath, deliberate, shifting. I felt it in my bones. In the hum of the air, in the pulse of the water. I leaned back against the earth. The fog seemed to lean with me, settling, heavy, accepting. The river whispered secrets I almost understood, hints and half-thoughts dissolving instantly. Time slowed. The world contracted to mist, water, and the pressure of unseen gaze. I breathed slowly, deliberately, matching the rhythm of the river's pulse. The trees whispered softly. Leaves rubbed together, murmuring faint echoes of my thoughts. I realized they knew me, remembered me, waited. I sat longer. The fog thickened around my face. The river murmured beneath my fingertips. And the eyes followed. I could not leave. I could not move. Acceptance settled like sediment in my chest. The river swelled slightly. A single shadow passed beneath the surface. I felt it acknowledge me before it slipped away, leaving only ripples. The fog closed in fully now. I was alone, yet entirely watched. The water whispered its endless secrets, patient, eternal, unmoving, and in the quiet I understood. Some places hold you. Some waters remember your name. Some fogs do not let go.